Hello, everyone. My name is Doug Edge. I'm Senior Vice President of Business Solutions at Farm Journal. It's great to be with you here today. Alongside me on your screen is James Karklands, who is with 7 Knots Digital, and Phil Stanhope with Pivot Bio. Thanks for taking a look. Yeah, good to see you guys. Thanks for being with us. Today, the title is on your screen for our Farm Country Update. It's Lessons Learned from the New American Farm Show Experience. And that's what we're here today to share with you from a journey that we've been on at Farm Journal now for several months. And many of you have been on that journey with us, and we thank you for your participation. Farm Journal's New American Farm Show Experience, if you're not familiar with it and wondering what we're talking about, it's the new industry standard, we believe, for agricultural information exchange. For us, it started with Crop Tour on August 17th, and it has not ended yet. But we wrapped up the live portion of it at the end of our Farm Journal Field Days with our Farm On 4-H benefit concert, featuring Lee Bryce there on the top right-hand corner of your screen, on the 27th of August. So it was 10 days packed full of a lot of agronomic information that we shared with the industry. Obviously, this was brought on by what we've all been experiencing with changes in the way we conduct business, driven by what's happened in our country with the COVID pandemic. What's exciting, though, for us is as this has forced some change for many of us, this has really broken down some walls and some barriers and really allowed us to gain a ton of efficiencies in our industry. And so we're here today to kind of share with you these lessons that we've learned. And we want to start by just kind of breaking down the numbers for you. We saw over that 10-day period over 50,000 farmers and ranchers from all across the U.S. and every one of our 50 states. They participated in interactive experiences, including live crop reports and analysis, some dynamic content that our team put together across the country, and live discussions and virtual networking opportunities. We actually saw a nearly tripling of our farmer participation in our Pro Farmer Crop Tour versus the previous live events. And the numbers do continue to grow. In fact, one of the things that I failed to mention is we had over 100,000 viewers of our concert as well that was distributed on RFD TV and across distribution platform on social networks and agweb.com as well. When you really dig into these numbers, and by the way, if you do have questions as we go along here, we do have a Q&A window that is open for you. You can ask questions. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end of this, so feel free to chime in with questions as we go along here, and we will be happy to address those. What we really learned is from those that participated, we were able to match back to our Farm Journal database, and the gross farm income was nearly $2 million of these farmers that participated. The average age was 61 years of age, and as you look at the data set of crops that they were growing, these were some of the largest growers of acres across corn, soybean, wheat, cotton, and when you drill into even some of the specialty crops, peanuts, tobacco, the list goes on. We did attract some of the largest, most influential producers in the industry. The same goes for livestock and dairy. We saw some of the biggest cow herd sizes in both dairy and beef, and some of the largest swine operations take part in our All-American Farm Show. As we look at some of the deeper insights with our Farm Journal data, we look at practice insights, early adopters of new technologies, succession planners, those that have identified their primary ag retailer. When we look at this really rich, robust data set, it gives us all kinds of insights about their brand preferences and other attributes that are obviously very useful when we look at lead generation programs and gaining intelligence around capturing market share and those kind of things. So from a data standpoint, we learned a lot by going through this and watching and observing and then matching back this data to our Farm Journal database. Some other stats we'd like to share with you is we saw almost 250,000 total visits to all 366 spaces within our Farm Journal Field Days environment. And spaces we define as pavilions, as exhibitor booths, as our main stage and our networking lounge area that farmers participated in. One of the most visited presentations was actually the behind the scenes look at the Blue Diamond Farming Company, which was one of our actual live sites. We do want to emphasize this was a hybrid event. We actually had real farmers on real production operations in 2 states during Farm Journal Field Days. And to back up, the week prior, we had real scouts out in the field surveying corn, soybean fields, contributing to our estimate on yield that took place during that time period as well. So even though I think a lot of hype and a lot of talk is around virtual, we do consider what we did being a hybrid experience with these operations and these scouts and farmers. Back to the Farm Journal Field Day stats, 8.5 was the average number of booths and pavilions that farmers and ranchers visited. And a big number that we were very pleased with was the average time that they spent inside an exhibitor booth, which was over 15 minutes. At this point, I want to share with you some of the ROI for our sponsors and exhibitors and what they saw. Obviously, we know that we have folks on with us today that didn't participate in this experience in terms of being a paid exhibitor or sponsor. And we have reserved some of that data and some of that intelligence for those paying clients. So we're just sharing with you some top level information here that will give you some insights into what's going on in the marketplace. Our show results for our exhibitors and those that had booths and pavilions, they received over, on average, 425 leads. We're estimating the average lead cost at $35, and obviously we're still doing some analysis on this. The show was just a little over a week ago, and we're actually deciphering what we consider high quality leads. And some of our booths saw some great traffic, and James will talk in a moment what kind of drove some of that engagement and higher quality leads, where others maybe didn't have quite as many, but still had substantially more than what they would have ever received at a traditional just live only event. With the added cost of physical travel expenses, time lost obviously for setup, tear down, plus meals, staffing, lodging, the factor of whether or not weather plays a role in a live event, the ROI for a hybrid event becomes very attractive. I think that was a big lesson and takeaway from what we did over that 10-day period. The other fun part about this is the leads continue to accumulate. The New American Farm Show didn't fold up its tent on August 27th. And in fact, if you go into our environment at Farm Journal Field Days right now, you might see several hundred farmers and ranchers engaging in content still today. And it's been over a week since the 27th there. The cost per lead factor will obviously continue to improve for those that took advantage of being a part of making history with us with our 10-day time period there. I want to introduce James. I mentioned James Karklins earlier to you, and will malfunction with my clicker. There we go. I want to bring James into the conversation here. And James, you're an expert in B2B, hybrid, virtual events. You've been with us all along the way through this journey that Farm Journal has taken. So we've provided both clients and our farming audience. I want to ask you a few questions. How does what Farm Journal did compare to other B2B hybrid and virtual events that you've seen out there in the marketplace?
Absolutely. And firstly, Doug, I'm really thrilled to be here, and thanks for having me. Look, I think this was a big operation. What Farm Journal did with Field Days is very unique, not only due to the scale. There was, as you mentioned, over 50,000 registrations, but also the content. We had over 360 pieces of content at Field Days, which there was really something for everyone, whether that's crop, livestock, agri-retail, or technology. The other thing is I think that Field Days took full advantage of the 3D virtual environment, which simulated a real event experience, which is so important right now. This is what people are looking for, not only in the agriculture industry, but across B2B sectors. At 7 Knots Digital, we are seeing a rise in more flat simulated events or 3D events where sponsors can customize backgrounds, display ads, banners, badges, and really replicate as close as possible to that in-person experience. Flat simulated 3D events have really been designed specifically to recreate as closely as possible that rich experience of live conferences, along with the virtual exhibition stands and also the facilitation of meeting rooms and networking events, which we saw a lot at Field Days. There were also many different ways to engage the audience, including the Farm On benefit concert, gamification, the ability to earn really cool prizes, trivia, networking lounges, and also the fact that there was content streaming live on site from 2 farm locations in Ohio and Idaho is something that we are seeing as is very unique to what Field Days had actually done.
So James, I just shared a number of stats and went through those maybe relatively quickly, but what do these stats really tell us about the ag industry that might be helpful as we look for ways to engage clients differently in what we all believe is now maybe the new norm?
Yeah, it's a really good point, Doug. Look, I think there's a few things. I think the first note is that you get far more accurate reporting and stats and metrics in a virtual environment than you would in an in-person environment. We have a wealth of knowledge to take away now from Farm Journal Field Days. And sponsors can make great use of the event data portal that basically tracks every movement of every participant in the platform. Some of the things that we found that I think will help as we engage differently is that particularly those in agriculture or farming tend to register later in the process. In fact, we found that 90% of all registrations occurred in the last week. That's not too typical for B2B, right? So the agricultural sector, the farming sector are later to register for these types of things. And we did see a really big tick up in that last week. I think the other thing too is that a lot of the audience and those in the agricultural sector logged onto the platform earlier in the day and engaged in networking activities from about 9 to 10 a.m. Central Time in the morning. And these were really our most traffic times for the networking lounge. So we found that quite an interesting statistic as well, which I thought was very fascinating.
So, James, what factors will contribute to the sustainability of hybrid events versus the traditional farm show?
Look, it's a great point, Doug. The world has changed recently because of COVID. And at 7 Knots Digital, we think it's going to be absolutely critical to always have a hybrid or a virtual backup option to go along with any in-person event. And I think it would almost be irresponsible for any marketer not to be thinking about an online component as well. And we expect digital will play a key role as part of the planning events and marketing budgets for the foreseeable future. I think there's a few things to really take away here. I think hybrid events offer a safer experience and also measurement that drives better return on investment. We are also seeing more in the industry combine in-person and virtual event experiences. And again, we expect this trend to continue due to COVID well into 2021 and beyond. I think that we don't feel virtual events will be another passing fad. Technology is becoming so much more sophisticated over the years, and we feel it's really here to stay. So, hybrid events is going to continue to be incredibly important for the foreseeable future. Virtual events offer a fraction of the cost of an in-person event, but can also attract more connections. We're all used to using FaceTime now, to using Zoom, etc., video calls, and they've really become the norm. And it's just much easier to participate in a virtual environment without having to leave your home or office. So I think, virtual hybrid events, you can extend your event, you can unleash more content, you can create a continuous attendee experience well after the event is over. And that includes on any device, including a mobile device as well. But most importantly, you can increase your sponsorship value. So I think, Doug, for those reasons, it's really here to stay.
James, as you've worked with us and helped us, we have a number of clients that are on today that did participate. We had lots of folks not only engaged in the crop tour event, but also in our Farm Journal Field Days with booths and pavilions and various levels of sponsorship. We want to provide them with some recommendations, and these are your recommendations to help with the long tail of what we did over that concentrated 10-day period, but to continue to drive leads and drive traffic. So I'm going to turn this over to you to kind of take us through some of these tips.
Yeah, look, absolutely. The first one really is to find reasons to drive traffic to your booth. And although this sounds really simple, what we found is that those booths or sponsors that had a live event or live session were much more likely to have more leads as a result. So live chat, live events, attendees really need a reason to go to your booth with a specific date or time. So we'd really make sure that that anyone that's considering sponsoring a virtual event, that make sure that you have live content in your booth or pavilion. The other thing too is update your content and keep it fresh. We recommend to update content every 4 to 6 weeks after the event is over. One thing that is critical is really creating dynamic and engaging content is really important. The other thing too to bear in mind is creating exclusive elements, and this is content that can't be found anywhere else. So, not just using content that is from a YouTube link, for instance, Doug, but adding content to your booth that is really exclusive. I think Pivot Bio did a great job with giving away free hats, as well as a sales blast-off event that they promoted in their booth. We also saw from Machinery Pete added auction pricing data, podcasts, and a live auction. So really thinking through exclusive elements that your audience can't get anywhere else is really important. The other thing I would say too is plan ahead. Keep the momentum going and think ahead. Start planning right now and think about your content. What content can you savor and create that content calendar for the next event. So I would really say start looking forward for next year and find content ahead of time that is of the most value to your audience, and save it. Save it for the next event so you have really valuable content, and again, not content that's freely available. And keep the momentum going and think ahead. So start planning right now and think about your content. The other thing I would say is with your booth staff, divide and conquer your booth staff. We had many booths that had up to 60 or 80 staff at any given point in time. But those that did a really good job actually ensured that they had someone throughout the virtual environment. So whether that was in the networking lounge, participating in the Q&A of live sessions, and really making sure that your staff are positioned appropriately around key promotions as well. The other thing too I would say is remember to tag your content. So make sure you're tagging your documents in your booth, that it's searchable so that the attendees can see the results. And for those sponsors on the call today, we would highly recommend going back to your booth and tagging content so that it is searchable for that, as Doug said, to really take advantage of the long tail of the platform and the fact that Farm Journal will continue to drive registrations. If you're an existing sponsor, the other thing that we would say is to update your booth chat message. Ensure that the booth staff have the option to be messaged directly to get the message, and encourage your team to use the messenger function. That doesn't mean you always have to have somebody staffed in the booth after the event, but making sure that they will get those messages as attendees are still engaging in the platform. The other thing too is add live sessions to your booth. So we found that attendees were 1.5 times more likely to attend a pavilion that had a live content. And this actually increased, Doug, to 1.7 times with more than one live session. So again, live content really, really matters. And it's important to make sure that you're adding something live and exclusive to your booth or pavilion.
James, it seems like on that point that content really shined as king for what we did here and what the exhibitors did as well. I mean, you could almost see a direct parallel, as you said, to those that not only had engagement, but had more leads come through their booth and they stayed longer if they had a lot of engaging content, both live and pre-recorded.
It's a really good point. Absolutely. And I think the other thing to bear in mind is that the engagement that we saw in the booths was up to 15 minutes. And we typically see B2B at around 5 or 6 minutes. So we saw some really good, strong engagement in the booths with participation from the sponsors, and the fact that there were a number of sponsors that really took advantage of having live and exclusive content. So content is just so important. It's a really, really good point. I think the other thing too is also, make a connection with your booth and pavilion content. Yeah, the pavilions drove twice as many leads as the sponsor booths, and there's opportunities to do more cross promotions with the booths and the pavilions. And then finally, really, we saw some amazing engagement across social media. You only have to look up the hashtags of Farm On or Field Days to really see what people were saying. And we were talking about this just before the call, Doug. But really, making sure that you're promoting across social media and finding ways to promote via social and use the hashtags, constantly drive people back to your booths and really give them a compelling reason to come back as well.
And it is a fun exercise for anybody that's watching. Obviously, we've shared a few tweets here in this presentation, but all you really need to go and do is get on Twitter and type in the search box, hashtag FarmOn, and you'll see all the comments and feedback of folks that participated and shared that hashtag over and over again and are continuing to share it still today. Thanks, James. And James will be answering questions with us. And we are starting to get some questions in already, and we do welcome you to put those in. We'll have some time for Q&A at the end. You can do that on the Q&A chat window at any time, though, during our presentation. I want to introduce Phil Stanhope to you now, who's the Director of Marketing at Pivot Bio. And Pivot Bio really embraced what we were doing at Farm Journal very early on, and came on board as both the premier sponsor for the Pro Farmer Crop Tour and also our Farm Journal Field Days and our Farm On Concert. And they really took advantage of everything that we offered with the New American Farm Show. And Phil, I'd like to, first of all, just have you give us a little bit of background, kind of walk our audience through your role and your involvement in getting engaged in what we're doing here.
Yeah, Pivot Bio is a company that's been around for 10 years, but we've only been engaged in commercial activities for the last 2 years. And right from the onset, we partnered with Farm Journal because we knew we had this tremendous challenge of building name and brand recognition, and we saw the value of that. So we have partnered with Farm Journal on a number of things, but at this point, everyone in marketing and ag has the same challenge of how to engage with growers with this whole new changed world. And so we saw the field days as an opportunity to really continue those efforts to build out our name and brand recognition. And I would say it's kind of interesting for us because unlike other companies that sell equipment or things that are big and visible, Pivot Bio sells microbes that can't be seen with the human eye. So live events pose a challenge to us anyway, because you can't come to our booth and see our product. It's literally invisible. So this opportunity to do a virtual event really in a way did offer us a unique opportunity to take advantage of video content and other illustrations in a way that we might not have been able to pull off as well in person. If you've ever been in a booth and there's a video running and there's all the noise and people moving around, often those things don't get any attention. But in this virtual situation, we did get a lot of engagement. And Doug had mentioned that the average lead generation was 425, and it's kind of interesting that our leads were 437 across these 3 days. So we did very well. And the virtual field day was right before our season sales launch. And, our microbes generate nitrogen. And many times growers don't look at those fertility investments until after harvest and often into January and February. And so we're really trying to change the paradigm and get ahead of that. So we actually started our sales kickoff was a week starting September 2nd through this last Tuesday. And our attendance at our launch event was probably double what we thought, and our sales were almost 3 times higher than our projections. So we are tickled to death at the level of engagement we've had and the increase in visibility. And we feel like this event was one of the things that helped drive that traffic.
And Phil, I want to go back a little ways in time here, because even prior to our launch of the crop tour event, Pivot Bio held their own virtual event as well that we helped to promote. Tell us a little bit about how that experience was and how that kind of you gained some real excitement around doing these type of things.
Yeah, and we're all learning about doing these events, and what you find out as you do them is the technology is something we all have to learn, and there's shortcomings. And I see in the chat there's even questions about bandwidth, and we've had those issues of people being able to log in, and even people on our panels having good steady internet connections. So there's been challenges, and we've enjoyed working with Farm Journal. I think we've learned as we've gone through this process, and I'm sure many of you who are doing these things, it's really our day-to-day life now. So we're all learning about how to live in this more virtual world. But yeah, we've learned a lot by partnering with Farm Journal.
Well, your own field day that you did prior to crop tour, I think you shared with me at one time, you're expecting numbers like we typically get for a webinar, right, that are kind of dwindling down, and you were pleasantly surprised that your own virtual event went very well.
Yeah, we had over 1,000 people at a virtual event, which is pretty extraordinary. It's hard to get past that 100, 200 level many times. So, and again, I think leveraging through partners like Farm Journal really gets the word out to a much broader audience than we could. As a new company, we've been working very hard to grow our own CRM, and we've had big success with that. But our footprint is very much smaller than the potential of collaborating with Farm Journal and the very large data set and footprint they have. So that was a huge advantage to having a successful event of our own.
Good to hear. Well, as we talked earlier about ROI, you referenced, the leads that you all got at Pivot Bio. You were a notch above the average, which I think is a testament to the type of content you were delivering within your environment. I know you took folks off into virtual rooms and had individual conversations with them, with your agronomy team and things like that. So you really put a lot of effort into it, and it paid off. And it sounds like it paid off in a big way at the end of the sales launch push there with hitting all your numbers.
Yeah, it's a new product. It's a new type of product. There's a lot of education that goes into this, and to have the opportunity for our agronomy team to be there and to answer questions in a setting, I think that's another kind of interesting thing about this virtual experience is sometimes the setting is a little bit more intimate, so questions can be comfortably asked and answered. And I think we saw a lot of that, and I think it went a long way in sort of raising the understanding of what our product is even all about.
So last question for you, Phil. Share with me, I understand you've had a chance to talk to a number of your sales leaders within Pivot Bio, some of the territory folks and things like that. What was the feedback you got from them? What were they telling you that really attributed to some of the success here that you had?
Well, last year was our first major sales year, and last year was a time when our sales team really had to start in many cases at zero. Who is Pivot Bio? What do we do? This is a microbial nitrogen product. How does that work? How do I apply it? How do I use it? What conditions does it work? And this year, the sales staff were calling me and saying, I have awareness when I'm talking to people. They've heard the name, they're familiar with their company, they've got a good idea of what we're doing, and they get excited about that because it's pretty tough as a sales guy to start at zero. And so having that recognition and a greater understanding of what we're doing really moves that process along much, much more successfully.
Awesome. Well, Phil, thanks for being here. Stick around. I know we've got some questions that are probably going to come in specific for you. And don't forget that you can get in the Q&A chat there and submit those to us, and we'll get to those here momentarily. I want to share with you now, and I think this was a question we've already received. Folks are asking about what farmers said. What did the farmers and ranchers think? And so we did conduct a survey right after Farm Journal Field Days, after August the 27th, to ask that question. And we actually had a very big pool of over 500 farmers that gave us these answers. 87% of them said that Farm Journal Field Days either met or exceeded their expectations. 70% described their overall experience as very good or outstanding. 85% plan to participate in another Farm Journal virtual event. 87% would recommend Farm Journal Field Days to a friend or colleague. And one of my favorite ones, 77% took action to learn more about a company or product they engaged in within the Farm Journal Field Days Expo Hall. So I think this, and you heard it right from Phil, I mean, this actually really worked nicely to get folks to engage with companies and their products. 75% felt companies that participated in Farm Journal Field Days cared more about connecting with farmers like themselves. And I think this is a big challenge we're all facing right now, is that farmer settlement when we can't have as much face-to-face interaction with them as we've been used to in the past. I think the perception was by these farmers and ranchers, at least 3/4 of them, that you really cared about them because you were involved in something like this, which I thought was a pretty good stat. We want to thank those of you that are on that did participate and helped us make history with the All-American Farm Show. We got some tremendous value, and we hope you did as well from your investment based on the quality of leads, the number of contacts, and position in the market that you took as a leader and innovator by participating in this with us. We will continue to deliver rich data, updates to the platform, guidance for maximizing the experience, and we have companies using this partnership to retarget and nurture leads and activate sales and launch their own virtual initiatives, just like Phil's company is doing in conjunction with us and with our help. And we would invite you to engage us with those kind of conversations. If you've not yet done a hybrid event or virtual event, you need some expertise, or you need the audience that you're looking for, a targeted audience. We've been able to deliver that for a number of companies. As we move forward and we talk about what's next for us at Farm Journal, and I see we've got several questions coming in about that, which this slide may answer some of it. It's important, I think, for us to look back on the journey. I mean, we've been on the same journey everyone else has. As we've seen shows cancel, we've seen conferences and trade shows and farm shows all either get canceled, postponed, or flipped to some type of a hybrid or virtual event. We did that research early on. That first image there is of a survey we did on AgWeb to really help understand, are farmers open to getting on Zoom and doing FaceTime and other technology means to engage with each other? And the research we did said, yes, they are. A majority of them are ready for that and are prepared to do that and would like to do that, in fact. And then it led us down a path of creating a event like Crop Tour, where we kept our scouts out in the field. We kept delivering the data and the important intelligence that everyone is looking for around estimating yield, but delivered it in a very safe and COVID-friendly way by having the updates be virtual in the evenings. We extended that on into our Farm Journal Field Days event, which allowed for companies to partner with us and actually, in a lot of sense, have that farm show field day experience within a safe virtual environment and live at our 2 farm sites in Iowa and Ohio. Next, coming up this month, we will put on a Sustainable Produce Summit that will be a virtual event. And we have also announced a Dairy Week event. We know that the World Dairy Expo has been canceled for this year. And so we want to offer something to those dairy producers where they can get some education, they can get an opportunity to still network and be with each other and learn from each other. So we have a lot of other things on the horizon. I invite all of you to stay tuned because we'll be making some more big announcements very soon about how we will continue to drive forward with the hybrid virtual event concept here at Farm Journal. We're going to open up some of the questions for myself and James and Phil, and we do invite you, as I've been mentioning all along, you can do that in the Q&A chat area there, and I'm going to bring a few of these up. The first one I have, and I suppose, James, this might be one for you. If a COVID vaccine is out soon, and the big scale in-person events return, will there be a future for what you just did? And I think you addressed that a little bit, James, earlier, but I don't know if you want to expound upon that at all.
Look, a great question, Doug. Unfortunately, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know when the COVID vaccine will come out and become available. I think that what we're hearing in the industry and what we feel very strongly is that there will continue to be a place for virtual events, and particularly more so for this type of hybrid environment where you do have a live event as well as a virtual component. So I think that's going to continue to be really important. I think unfortunately we just don't have that crystal ball. We don't know when things are going to come back to normal, what the new normal really is. But I do think that we feel very strongly that virtual is really here to stay.
I wonder, James and Phil, for you as well, though, if we would ask those companies that compare and contrast the numbers we shared today, how much you can justify going back to a straight live event when we delivered over 425 leads. When you look at that cost per lead number and you take out all the extra expenses that go into it, and like you mentioned, Phil, for a company like you, there's really nothing to show, right? I mean, you're into that. Right. I really wonder what the demand will be like even to go back to a strictly live event.
Right, and we're sort of a unique situation because of our product line, but it's for us. We're not big participants in big shows because of our product type. However, I would say that I think there's still a hybrid event is probably the best solution because people still want to get out and talk to each other, and that networking is still possible virtually, but let's just say it's a lot less fun than when you're face to face. So I think in the future there's going to be a combination of these things, and I think the virtual piece gives a chance for a regional show to have much bigger participation, coast to coast, even around the world. People can come and participate, and I think that offers an awful lot.
Phil, the next question I think is really for you, and James, you might chime in here as well. But were you and other exhibitors surprised by the age of attendees? I think we shared that earlier in the presentation that the average age was 61. Was that a bit of a surprise? You think it would skew younger than that?
It's funny because in survey after survey that I've looked at, many of you looked at for years, especially things with social media or the use of technology or the use of cell phones, we always predict that age group is going to be really down at the younger range. But in reality, we see that it usually is not. We have farmers in their 50s and 60s who embrace technology in big ways. And if you think about it, it embraces technology in amazing ways. So I think that didn't really surprise me. And we were pleasantly surprised because we think that's still the age group that is the decision maker age group. And so we're actually glad about that.
James, how about you? Similar thoughts or any surprise there on the age?
Yeah, perhaps a little bit surprising. I think with the Farm On Benefit concert, I would have thought we would be reaching a younger audience, particularly with some of the talent that we had. So a little bit surprising. But I think we found the average age was 61 overall. But I think Phil, you make a really good point that the older audience are more adept now to leveraging technology and leveraging Facebook and new social media tools as well. So I think it does make directionally a lot of sense.
Phil, another one for you. What best practices has the Pivot Bio team learned about making the most of hybrid events? Any best practices that you've shared? Maybe a few of those, but anything?
I think there's two major things. Content is so important that you have really engaging content. And in many cases these days, video really is the best content. And then the other thing, having that virtual booth, having people in there live who are talking to people real time, answering questions. I think those were the two big takeaways for us, is that gave us the best engagement.
This question coming to us, asking about, there's a number of these questions related to broadband and the availability of rural broadband in particular, and how that impacted participation and those kind of things. So James, this is more probably a technical question, but this is something that we were very concerned about as we pursued this. What can you share with us about bandwidth issues?
Yeah, it's actually a really great question. I'm pleased it came up. This was certainly something that we were very focused on, particularly because of the rural nature of the audience. It was very important from the get-go that we worked with a platform that can throttle the bandwidth connection and can recognize a different connection speed. So that was really important for Farm Journal and for Field Days, and we ensured that we were working with a platform that can throttle the connection and recognize different connection speeds as well. Not every platform can do that, Doug. So it's really important that if you are considering doing virtual events, that you are working with a platform that can throttle the bandwidth and recognize different connection speeds.
Very good.
And Doug, I would just add on our events, that's been the biggest challenge of people not being able to sign on and have the best experience. So it is a challenge.
Yeah, for sure. We know it's a big one for the U.S. That gap in rural broadband definitely still exists. Another question coming in, was exhibitor content developed and produced by exhibitors or by Farm Journal or both? They're asking us, please talk about content development process that was used. So I can answer some of this. I mean, it was a combination of both. Farm Journal did assist in some cases developing content for some of the exhibitors. We obviously developed a lot of content within the platform itself. We had a number of exhibitors nationwide. For example, if you visited the nationwide booth, they had a succinct message that was delivered about their offering from Peyton Manning that was specific to the show. So it was very creative, and they did all that production themselves. I think, Phil, in your case, I want to say you guys probably did a majority of the content. Was that right?
Yeah, we did the majority of the content, and we don't have a Peyton Manning budget, so.
But it was still good. Yeah. Yeah, so I think the answer to the question is it was a combination of both. Most of our exhibitors that had pavilions and just booths did create a lot of content themselves. But that process, and James mentioned it too earlier, really started early. And as you pointed out, one of your recommendations was to continue developing that and thinking ahead on that content play.
Yeah. Look, absolutely. And the other thing too is that we gave sponsors access to an exhibitor portal where they could upload their own content, create their own rich experience, update their backdrops, and really reflecting their overall brand look and feel. So that's really important as well. So just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, and I would just speak to that. I mean, sometimes as a sponsor coming in, those things can be difficult, and it was very easy for us to upload our content, and everything was easy to format, so that was nice.
Another good, I think, technical question, probably, James, you might be able to give some insight on. The question comes in about where is this technology going even next year? There's so much rapid advancement here in developing this environment right now. Any insight on where you think this technology might be a year from now?
Yeah, look, it's changing rapidly, Doug, and it's evolving all the time. In fact, as a company, we've been involved in doing virtual events for a number of different clients, and particularly in the last 6 months, we're seeing it evolve rapidly. There's emergence of new platforms that are out there on the marketplace today. We think video will continue to be a really strong component. The ability to network and chat exactly like what we're doing now. I think the rise of the 3D type of environment that we saw for Farm Journal Field Days, I think we'll see more and more of that as companies try to replicate the in-person experience. But it is changing, and it's certainly ever evolving. I'm really excited to see where this industry goes. I think for the real technology savvy industry, we're seeing companies use platforms that take the 3D to another level, like a Tomb Raider type of experience. I'm fascinated to see where the virtual reality goes, or those virtual environments, and where the industry ends up. So it will be fascinating to track what happens certainly in the next 6 to 12 months.
I think it's safe to say it's going to evolve rapidly, though, right?
It's safe to say it's going to evolve rapidly. I think that's a really, really good point.
Next question we have, what level of data do sponsors get compared to what we showed in the presentation here? And when does the data become available to them? So I can address that, and Phil knows this because of his relationship with it. We've delivered some of the data, and Phil quoted their exact number of leads that they got. We delivered that data within just a couple of days of the event, of the live portion of the event ending on the 27th. We are delivering over 100 data points on each of the leads that they get back to the farm. That does take a little bit more time to process and to churn out that data. Many of our sponsors and exhibitors are getting that data yet this week, and we will continue to provide updates on data because, as I mentioned, and we've talked all along, we didn't fold up the tent on the 27th. We continue to have farmers attending, and some days I get on the platform and there's several hundred farmers engaging in content and even visiting the networking lounge and chatting with each other. And so it's kind of fun to see how this continues to live on. Our editors continue to drive traffic there. Our exhibitors continue to drive traffic there as well through social platforms and various distribution points. So we'll continue to provide data updates throughout the 365-day experience that those who participated signed up for. The next question I've got, what's the biggest mistake an exhibitor can make with a virtual show? James, you want to tackle that one? What's the biggest mistake you've seen out there in all the B2B work you've done?
Yeah, I think, again, it really comes down to content, really making sure as a marketer that you're thinking about the content strategy well in advance. And I think savvy marketers today get that. They understand the value that content provides in the customer journey. So, from what we find is really not thinking about the content strategy, not really giving that any foresight leading up to an event participation. So that's really the biggest one. And again, also making sure that as a sponsor that you've got exclusive content, you've got live content, and you're really thinking about that. And I think savvy marketers today, like we saw with Pivot Bio, for instance, are really thinking about ways to leverage content in the best way. So I think, Doug, that's probably the biggest one that we see is making sure that you have a content plan, that you're really taking advantage of the booth and the functionality that the platform has to offer. And a lot of these platforms, and particularly what we saw with Farm Journal Field Days, is that you can get incredibly creative with the types of assets, with the backgrounds, with adding badges and display ads. There's just so much branding opportunities. And I think, Phil, to your point before, is that you mentioned that it's really elevated your brand. And there was a number of opportunities in the environment to showcase the sponsor brands. So I think thinking through ways to do that creatively and having a plan, I would say, is really the most important thing to be thinking about.
Good advice. Several questions around the hashtag Farm On Benefit concert and the 4-H fundraising effort that took place there. One, just a point of clarification, someone wanted to confirm the concert attendance. So on the concert itself, the concert was streamed through the Farm Journal Field Days platform. It also was streamed on social media. So 4-H streamed it on their own 4-H channel on Facebook, for example. We also had it on agweb.com, and RFD TV aired the concert, the 1-hour concert, on their platform as well. So aggregating all the viewership of that concert becomes a little challenging because there are so many points of distribution for it. We do estimate that over 100,000 viewers tuned into that concert. We are going to have more verified data probably by the end of next week to tell you how big that audience really was, but it was pretty substantial. The other question we're getting, and we've gotten this all along, is how much did we raise for 4-H in that effort? We do not have the total tally on that. 4-H is still calculating those numbers. There were a number of matching donors, corporate donors that participated. We do know that they did share with us that the Day of the concert was the largest single giving day that the 4-H has ever had. So we did make a bit of history there, which was nice to hear. But we will be tracking that and probably getting some final numbers here within the next week or so back from 4-H. But that's just a couple of things about the concert. I think everyone had a great time, and it was a great experience. Fortunately and unfortunately, we had a lot of distribution for that concert, and it's tough to aggregate all the numbers, but we're doing that on the back end still today. Another question that I think is for Phil here for Pivot Bio. Was Pivot Bio actively reaching out to people in their booth, or were they responding to people asking them questions via chat? So were you like seeing folks coming into the booth, Phil, and reaching out, or were you just being reactive to those that came in and asked questions?
No, it was mainly the traffic coming into the booth. I mean, we promoted this even beyond Farm Journal, so we were encouraging people to come and engage with us, but most of it was traffic that came through the booth.
Awesome. We did want to allow plenty of time for Q&A, and there's a ton of questions coming in. I do want to say, if we run out of time here at the top of the hour, we'll do our best to address these offline afterwards. I also want to make an announcement before we run out of time that this presentation, several of you have asked if it would be made available, if the recording or audio would be made available, and we will make this available. It'll be at farmjournal.com, and you can find the Farm Country events, all of our updates we do, our Farm Country forums, and like this, our Farm Forum update, are all available there at the Farm Country events tab on farmjournal.com. We'll have this uploaded by close of business tomorrow there for you to download. So if you come back Monday, you should have everything there to review and go back to, including the presentation itself with the data that we're sharing here. Also, if you have individual questions and you'd like to reach out to us, feel free to shoot me an email personally. It's dedge@farmjournal.com. That's D as in Doug, and then my last name, Edge, EDGE, @farmjournal.com. And we'd be happy to answer any questions specifically that maybe you didn't feel like putting out here in public. Next question, what role did social media play getting farmers engaged with the event? And James, you were pretty actively involved with the social media plan around what we did here. Anything you'd like to share there?
Yeah, so social media played a big role in driving overall engagement and awareness of the event and ultimately registration. So we actually had a social plan leading up to the event, and we're very active across all social channels, including Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So social was a very important part of the overall marketing mix for Farm Journal Field Days, and it was very important that we made sure that we were promoting key sessions, we were promoting sponsors, as well as keynote speakers throughout the different social channels. So we were promoting actively 10 to 15 posts a day on Twitter, and very actively retargeting through Facebook and other social channels. So yes, I would say, Doug, that it played a really crucial role in the overall registrations for Farm Journal.
Another question about whether or not, I believe this is directed at Farm Journal, if we organize private events for companies, assuming they're asking about if we do custom hybrid or virtual events for folks. And we do have a content services and events division within Farm Journal, and we do work with companies. Phil explained earlier, they hosted their own virtual event, and in Pivot Bio's situation there, Phil, you guys did some of the heavy lifting on your side, right? You organized the event, you actually did the production part. We really just helped get you the audience.
That was right. We did the production, and I think Farm Journal, as I said, that's really a key. I mean, we also push through social media, but if you want to really target in on a farm audience, the Farm Journal is the way to go.
So the short answer to that question really is we're very flexible and very easy to work with. We've got experts like James to consult with on our team now, and we've done successfully a number of these kind of one-off, one-day field days, conferences, things like that, specific for companies, where we've been able to help provide the audience, a targeted audience, if you will, to who they're trying to attract. In some areas, we do some of the heavy lifting as well. We do have a production capabilities and things like that, but we're happy to help wherever you need us to fill in and help. The next question is, what kind of cost was there from the IT side of the equation? So I'm assuming this is could be geared at us, or it could be geared at maybe Phil. Phil, I'll start with you first. From your team's perspective, was there much of an investment you had to make from an IT standpoint to be able to participate in this event?
I can't think of any. I mean, the only cost for us really was wrapped around creating some new content, but the IT part, I mean, to me, it's kind of funny because when I hear that, I don't even think about that. We passed our content on to you, and you did all the work. So
from your standpoint, it's pretty turnkey, and I think
absolutely
the interface we had was pretty user friendly for companies to be able to get their information. And James, from our side, obviously Farm Journal made a significant investment. We're not going to disclose all the dollars here today or all the details around that, but this is something that we feel is part of our future and part of the industry's future. And so there was a significant IT investment there. Anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a really good point. There certainly was a significant IT investment for Farm Journal to host an event of this scale. But for the sponsors, we tried to make this really, really seamless. And the fact that we used a platform that was flexible enough for the sponsors to really create the experience, the branding, the look and feel that they wanted. And that was really important to us in Farm Journal, with having the sponsors in mind, so that they could really create their ideal branding experience in the platform. So yeah, certainly there was quite a heavy investment from Farm Journal and Field Days to host an event of this scale, but we did try to make it very turnkey for the sponsors involved.
Great. I think we'll wrap up here. One last question. What were the most popular, best attended sessions with attendees at Farm Journal Field Days? I know we shared in this presentation that the tour of Ben Ritchie's farm, the Blue Diamond Farming Company in Iowa, was one of the most participated in sessions. I know Machine Repeat had a number of sessions that were very engaging, that had a lot of traffic. Anything else jump out at you, James, from that standpoint?
Yeah, there was a few actually. The concert obviously was very well participated, which Doug you've already mentioned. The other one that was interesting was managing through the Black Swan cycle. That was also very highly trafficked. You also mentioned the behind the scenes Blue Diamond Farming Company. That was also very successful. I think the other one that was also very interesting, the events around COVID did also very well. We had a session about what will livestock technology look like in the face of COVID. So that was one, because it was COVID related, also did very well. We also had sessions around early risers and the politics of agriculture, farmers talking trade, policy, and 2020 elections. So anything that was related to COVID and the elections also seemed to do really well. Things around predicting chaos and weather risk in production agriculture. We also saw some very good attendance there as well.
Topics. Yeah, good topics. Well, we're at the top of the hour. I want to be conscious of everyone's time. I want to thank James and Phil for joining me. I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to join us on our lessons learned from the New American Farm Show here at Farm Journal. Don't forget, you can download this at farmjournal.com, and feel free to reach out to me with any other questions or feedback. We'd love to hear from you. dedge@farmjournal.com. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks for spending time with us here at Farm Journal.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.